Environmental ethics is a branch of philosophy that examines the moral relationships of human beings to the environmentals and its non-human contents. This field has gained considerable importance in recent decades as the impact of human activities on the environmental also and has become more apparent. The core beliefs of environmental ethics comes from a different ethic theories that looks to find a harmony between human progress and protecting the environment. One significant perspective in environmental ethics is the human-like approach, which places us humans at the center of moral consideration. Um, this view argues that the environmental preservation is valuable only if it benefits in the human ways, and the anthropocentrism often leads into a instrumental value of nature, where environmental conservation is persuaded for the sake of the maintain the resources that are useful to human well-beings. And in the story or in the book, Louis Vaughan, in his book during the ethics, he explores this approach and has become criticized for its limited scopes in addressing environmental concerns, as it does not consider the value of nature itself. In contrast, the ecocentric approach argues that nature has basic values independent of human use. This view is championed by the thinkers like William Cronon, also like in his Uncommon Ground book, suggests that the ethic responsibility extends to all living beings and ecosystems. The environmental advocates for a global view where the well-being of all the entire ecological community is considered ethical decision making, I guess you say. And in Victor Papanek's book, The Green Imperative, he dives into the ethics of design and architecture, proposing that the creation of products and structures should be considered their environmental impacts. Papanek's work showed the importance of sustainable design in reducing climate change and promoting harmony with nature. He argues that environmentally responsible designs is not just a professional obligation, but a critical moral. The issue with climate change leads to an extreme ethical dilemma, and John Broome, in the text Climate Matters, he presents an engrossing argument that climate change is not only an environmental issue but also a moral one. Broome suggests that the current generation has an assignment to reduce the effects of climate change to prevent any damage. He wanted to focus on the ethical response to climate change that requires reducing carbon emissions and promoting the policies that support sustainable development. And Broome approaches in planted utilitarian ethics, which values that the action based on the consequences for overall well-being. From their perspective, addressing climate change is very essential because the potential of suffering and the loss of a life caused by not taking action is more worse than the expenses of using sustainable practice. The human-nature relationship is the main theme in environmental ethics. Humans have viewed nature as a resource to be exposed for economic gain. However, this view has led to environmental decay and loss of biodiversity. Also, modern ethics have been challenged by promoting a more respectful relationship with nature. Cronon's Uncommon Ground argues that the rethinking that human places in nature says that people should see themselves as a part of the ecosystem rather than an external agents with powers over it. Environmental ethics also shows a framework for evaluating the difficult and often conflicts between human society and the nature world. The work of Vaughan, Cronon, and Papanek and Broome displayed the diverse perspectives within the fields, from humanistic to ecocentric approaches, also explaining environmental issues like climate change requires a moral requires a moral commitment to reduce a harmful and promote sustainable practice that respects the nature of value. As environmental challenges become more difficult, the ethnic talks around the issue will continue to expand, and this will probably lead to humanity towards a more balanced relationship with the environment. And I guess you could say there's one way to understand environmental ethics is to look at the different perspectives it offers. Um, one common but controversial view is that the human-centered approach. This perspective values the environment primarily for what it can provide to humans, whether it's clean air, fertile soil, or breathtaking landscapes that fuel tourism and creativity. In this view, nature matters because it benefits us, and that's where most of our stuff come from, like our foods and our society. As Louis Vaughan discusses in Doing Ethics, anthropocentrism has become criticized for being too narrow by seeing nature only as a tool for human use. This approach risks for overlooking the bigger picture, as in the nature has its own value, whether or it's not served human interests. On the other end of the spectrum, it is the ecocentric approach, which argues that the nature has intrinsic worth, independent of its useful to humans. This perspective challenges us to see ourselves not as masters of the environmental, but as members of the vast ecological community. Thinkers like William Cronon in his book An Uncommon Ground pushes for a shift in mindsets like what if we saw every river, forest, and creature as having its own purpose and right to exist. This encourages us to take a responsibility for the well-being of ecosystems as a whole, not just for their ability to serve our needs, but between these two extremes, there's an intriguing middle ground found in the work of Victor Papanix. He argues that the choices like architects, engineers, and product designers make can either harm or heal the planet. For Papanix, sustainable design isn't just a professional responsibility, it's a moral one. He asked us to consider what would the world look like if if every building or product or tool were created with the environment in mind. Climate change is perhaps the greatest and ethical challenges of our time, and it is no longer just a scientific political issue. It's deeply personal and more moral. John Broome also frames climate change as an issue of justice, and he points out that the current generation's actions will either protect or harm the upcoming generations. Environmental ethics isn't just an abstract concept for philosophers. It's something we face every day when we choose to buy sustainable products or... give me 1 second. But he often, something we face every day, whether we choose to buy sustainable products, reduce waste, or support the conservation efforts we were making in ethical decisions. Even small actions like turning off the lights or biking to work. He reflects our values and our willingness to consider the impact of our choices on the planet, but individually, actions aren't really just enough. Real changes require collective efforts from the government to the businesses and the communities, and all of them must be worked together to create the policies and practices that protect the environment. And this includes everything from banning the single uses of plastic to investing in renewable plastic. And yeah, so that basically goes over the whole environmental ethics and how I was basically talking about what it meant and the background story behind environmental ethics. and how far it goes into our lives and what it benefits and how we could make different changes into the world. And yeah.